That's just the way it goes. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I am Shane.
I'm Chris.
So we're going to be doing a lot of PowerShell today, and specifically PowerShell in relation to, obviously, PDQ products. Lex is off somewhere, but we'll still make fun of him. And with him being gone, his retorts will even be wittier than were he here.
Oh, zing, snap.
We know what he'll say. And
Wonderful.
We can anticipate it. This guy.
Lex,
Yeah.
I call it Lex Sense.
No, Lex is doing some training today. So anyway, happy Chris. Let's rock on. Let's get it going.
Yay. All right, cool. So today we're kind of going to go over initializing scans and deployments using PowerShell, which it's actually using the command line interface that the PDQ products both have, which if you haven't used them, highly recommend you take a look at them because they are awesome. Almost as awesome as Corgis and PowerShell. Just throwing it out there. It's pretty high up on the scale. So,
Corgis.
Yeah. So, here we go. First off, we want to kind of touch base a little bit on being able to deploy PowerShell remotely. Because part of the whole premise of this, you know what? I'm actually going to take a step back. Let us discuss the command line.
Do you mean execute remotely?
Yes, I will. I will mean that when we get to that point. When you install PDQ Deploy or PDQ Inventory, it actually adds it to your path, so you can actually access this from basically any directory, so you don't have to type out the full path, which I'm not going to do. As you can see, we're using C Windows System 32. But if you actually type out the name of the program, you'll actually see a list of commands.
You'll see a usage statement.
Yeah, and what you can do. We're not going to focus on all of them today. We're just going to focus solely on how to do deployments, how to do trigger a schedule, how to scan a computer, or how to scan a collection. So we got 4 points we're going to go over. And just here, you can do it from a command window, or you can do it from a PowerShell window. It works the same in both, although PowerShell is much cooler because you can do a lot more fancy manipulating of the data.
Of course,
a lot easier.
Some of you might be going, well, I can do all this from the GUI. Why I can initiate a scan, I can initiate a deployment. Yes, precisely, but there are a lot of cases that you're going to run into where it's going to be easier, particularly if you're a remote machine, where you want to trigger a specific deployment or a scan, and you don't want to have to be at the console. So that's what we're talking about. Specifically, perhaps if you've got a machine that does imaging, after it's imaged a machine, and you want to now run some deployments, you could have you could script this out so PowerShell initiates nested packages to get your baseline set up to where you want to go. So just think of it that way. We're not saying, oh, don't use the GUI. We're saying, hey, a lot of you, I don't think, are aware that this feature, that this ability is there. So that's what we're hoping to enlighten. Go ahead.
Yes, and free up your time. This saves time. Automation is awesome. Remember that. Okay. So we'll dive right in.
Isn't that what Dennis said from Jurassic Park?
Probably.
before the whole place went to pot. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to dive
You're
right
a Dennis.
Awesome.
You're Nedry.
You didn't say the corgi word.
Oh, man.
So, diving right in, I created a couple collections just for this webcast and a package and schedule. Just I'm going to focus on those.
Okay.
And so, just so that I remember them, because they're fancy and extra fancy, and that goes along with most of my stuff. It's pretty fancy. So, and here we have a deployment. I have this example package, which is a package example. It's pretty self-explanatory. All right.
No need to state the obvious. The incredibly obvious will do.
It's true. I will strive for that. With that, in addition to what Shane was saying about remotely executing PowerShell in order to remotely execute PDQ deploy within your network to trigger something with baselining, there's also applications for where you might want to run it on your local machine, but you might want to script it out with like a task, scheduled task or anything. So there's a lot of different applications for this if you haven't considered them. So initially, we're going to focus on the remoting aspect of it.
Okay.
And then I want to jump back to more local just because we can do things faster than having to wait for the delay of remote stuff going on. So with that, I do want to touch base saying that in order to do remote PowerShell, you do need to enable remote PowerShell. It's as simple as typing enable PS remoting. We have a blog post on that. We even discussed it previously with Stephen Valdinger, who was out here with us, did a webcast. We discussed it then as well. So please take a look at that webcast, that blog, and you'll actually see those examples we include the PowerShell one and the command line one as well for if you're using
I
a batch
still haven't
file.
put that package out. I know we've gone internally. Do you think that would be a good package?
We should take a look at it. I mean, maybe if people want to use it and be able to easily enable that without having to remember, oh, what's that command? Oh, no. So we'll get that to you. So with that, assuming that you have that enabled, there's also one more caveat that we need to discuss.
This is important, guys.
This is very important. A few major versions ago, we separated the background service user and the console, the actual main window console user. Oh, good, yes, wonderful. Pull up preferences, and you actually see that in the background services page here.
Background services is being run as Quintana, but the console, I don't remember how to do that. The console is running as Chris Powell. Now, we did this, as we mentioned, very, very important for some very big features that are forthcoming. Yep. But in doing this, the communication that we broke between that we made between the background service and the console user, we use named pipes. Unfortunately, there's a problem with that in PowerShell. So there is, Chris will walk you through a workaround. This will be fixed natively, I think, in Deploy 13. But for now, there's just one registry change you have to make to enable this to work.
Yes, and that's only for PDQ deploy. PDQ inventory, you should still be able to scan remotely without doing this. So solely for deploy. So if you don't use deploy command line, then forget about it. You don't need it. With that being said, we do have these documents that I'm about to show you available on the webcast bonus page that we have set up. Everything we're showing today will be available. I think it's already available right now, so that you can actually peruse, follow along, paint along by color, and we can actually see that this is what we're implementing. In the registry, the local, HKey local machine, you just need to create in this path. Yeah. Awesome. I'm just getting excited with the highlighter. Create this particular value. It's a D word, and the value that you're going to set to is the port that you wish to open, so that instead of using named pipes, we're actually going to use TCP. So it's really simple. You just have to enable it and then restart your console and background servers, and you're done.
It's a D word value.
Yes.
So what's the TCP?
It's just the port that you need. So in this case, I actually wrote a quick little, put together a little registry file that you can just kind of implement. And this will actually do it with port 7777. Really simple, really straightforward.
That's what I wanted to convey.
Yes. So it's easy. If you have any questions, feel free to
this
hit us
only
up,
needs to happen on the PDQ deploy console machine. This does not need to happen on your targets.
Good point.
You do, a separate issue, if you want to enable the remoting on your targets, like for the new tools library and inventory, then you have to enable the PowerShell remoting on those targets. What we're talking about here, this is just one registry setting on the console machine.
Yes, so really quick, really easy, and like we said, it's a stopgap until we think about version 13 when this will be unnecessary. So once you have that enabled, you should then be able to connect to your console machine from another machine, and then run these commands with PowerShell.
Okay.
So we're going to do that right now. We're going to jump to this machine right here. This is Wolverine, not in the flesh though, mind you. So here we're going to trigger a deployment, and we'll just quickly go over that we have this invoke command and then the computer name. The computer that we're running the webcast on is Guinness, so we're going to target Guinness and run the following command down here, which is just simply pdq deploy and then the package name and the targets that you wish to do. Feel free to explore this in the command line so you can actually see all the syntax. And again, in the documentation that we included on the webcast bonus content, I kind of spelled that out a little bit.
And I'm going to show you really quick here. You brought up this part of the usage statement. Yeah, that's just doing PDQ deploy, but do PDQ deploy and then deploy. And either just hit you can do help, or just nothing. Just PDQ deploy, and it gives you that usage statement saying, okay, you need to have, dash package is an optional one, dash targets for your string, and it's separated by spaces for the targets machines. Just use that for if you want to know what the usage statements are. All right.
That's great. And so you can explore. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I mean, we're happy to explain. I'm happy to explain this. So what we're going to do here is deploy the package example package, which we saw in deploy, and target Wolverine. So we're on this remote machine, Wolverine, saying, hey, point to Guinness and say, Guinness, run your deployment for example package, but directed at Wolverine. So it's kind of going back and forth here. Anyway, so let's run this. We'll run this script. It'll tell us that it's kicked off, and then we'll switch views here to see the deployment. It can take a moment for it to actually get this started, but once it does, it'll actually trigger this on Guinness, and then we can actually see the deployment start. There it is. We'll switch back to deploy, and here it is. It's running against Wolverine. That easy. You could script this, you could automate this, you could make it pretty, you could make it ugly. I mean, you have control.
A lot of people do use other utilities like PSExec
I like the hot
to
fuzz
get this
reference.
done. But we're just wanting to show you, guess what? You've got PowerShell out there.
Yeah.
You can actually use this natively.
Yep. And with any other product too. I mean, if you're using SCCM, if you're using other products in combination with PDQ deploy, but there's something you need from their product that is very, very special and very, very really weird or something. I don't have a good example because I've never used SCCM myself, but you could then call PDQ deploy directly from that by using this, which makes it infinitely more powerful.
Yeah, we have a question? Go for it.
Question from Eddie C. Dear Shane and Chris, can we add and remove Windows 10 modern apps using PowerShell? We've tried using a command step or PowerShell step with commands like remove apex package, nerd, blah, 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 with mixed,
Why do you
mostly
work here?
poor results. Eddie C.
Hi, Eddie. I'm going to take this one if you don't mind.
I know that you and Jordan have been working on this a little bit.
Especially Jordan. Jordan, we should actually have Jordan come out here. He's
No, we don't
super
want to
versed in
break
this.
the screen.
Ooh, snap.
Making fun of you, Jordan.
So let's just lay this down immediately. Piping the results from the get apex package to the remove apex package works great for one user. The all users switch that you're using for the get apex package does not exist with remove apex package. And in fact, if you actually dive into the documentation of that particular commandlet, or even go look at it, the actual code itself, since PowerShell is open source, you can go look at this. It only accepts one at a time. You cannot run it for all users. All the which is weird because you see a lot of documentation online. 80 to 90% of it is completely wrong. To be
You were
quite
going to
honest.
say something else. Yeah, all users. It's talking about per user.
Yeah.
Right?
We do have. We're investigating kind of a good way that we could probably possibly integrate something going forward with PowerShell. There's a few different ways to tackle this. Quick, easy ways. But you know what? I'm going to keep you in suspense because we actually have something coming up that's not quite polished yet. So I don't want to spoil anything or give misinformation. So. Anyway, the end result is that command doesn't work with multiple computers because it's per user. Each of the apex packages is per user, and they get installed when the user logs on for the first time. In order to remove that, you have to uninstall it per user, and then in addition to that, remove the provisioned package, which is kind of the template that says, hey, when you log on, install this. I mean, it gets pretty hairy pretty quick.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope that answers it.
Sorry, Eddie. Forthcoming, and at least you can. There is a way to do it, per user, just not for all users.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. So we'll just jump right back to our pal Wolverine. So that we did a deployment that was fancy. We're just going to show you doing a remote scan with inventory, and then we'll dive into the little more complex stuff. So here we go. We're just going to use PDQ inventory to scan Wolverine with the scan profile computer info, which is one of the default ones that is available, which is why I chose that. You could choose any scan profile that you have. If you do not have it on that machine, it will give you an error saying that it cannot find the scan profile. So we're just going to quickly switch to inventory to show you that Wolverine is not currently scanning.
Actually, change it so that it goes Wolverine and Xavier. I want them to see that you can do multiple computers.
Sure, and you're jumping ahead. But yes, we will get to that. But yes, we can do that. We can actually go Xavier, just like that. So we will run this. And I will save this and run it. I'm going to switch over here so you can sit in suspense waiting for the scan status section to show that it's actually doing its thing.
And you did. By the way, you did pick a scan profile that runs very quickly.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. It's already showing up as queued. Yes, and that's actually why, because it's a very
You didn't want to run standard and have.
No. as awesome as standard is, that's why we call it standard. This is faster. So as you saw, it did scan both of those machines, and it did it wonderfully. So you can do scanning remotely as well as deployments. Awesome.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. We like questions.
Dear Chris and Shane, do all the PS scripts work with every Windows 10 language variant or only with Windows 10 English or Anglais? Christian M.
Hi.
Hey, Christian M. I mean, when you say all the PS scripts, are you talking about just in general all the PowerShell scripts that are available out there, or I guess we need to narrow it down. I'm pretty sure any of those commandlets that are available from Microsoft and other vendors probably work with different languages. Obviously, we work with English here. If you're talking about with PowerShell and PDQ deploy, you're going to need to use the English syntax, the dash targets and stuff like that. If that's what you're talking, I'm not sure if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I honestly don't have experience. I've used it in Japanese, but in Japanese especially, I'm not sure about other languages, but Japanese, they tend to use the English version for stuff, so the commandlets are all the same. You might have a different looking path, or you might use Unicode characters or something, but other than that, it's pretty straight across the board. If you run into issues, please.
I'm going to go ahead and say yes.
Yeah.
But that's provisional. That's a provisional yes, answering what I think your question was. I apologize.
Yes, it's yes with an asterisk by it, because there's a footnote that you can't see. Anyway, cool, good question though. All right, so we did scan, so I'm going to not jump back to the remoting aspect of this, though everything that we do from here on out still can be done using that same invoke command, and it works beautifully. We just want a little quicker result, so we're just going to skip to the local machine here on Guinness and show you that I have a bunch of examples for both deploy and inventory.
Okay.
So we've already done some examples for single targets, for multiple targets. In addition to that, you can also deploy and change the username. So if you have multiple credentials that you wish to deploy with, you can actually specify that from your command line and actually change back and forth and do that.
And those credentials have to have been specified in PDQ deploy.
Yes.
Just so you know.
Yes, they need to be specified in PDQ deploy. In addition to that, they also need to be, I believe they have to have access to the console user.
But the good thing about that is you're not having to pass the password, because the password has already been entered into PDQ deploy. It is encrypted.
Yep.
And all you're saying is, for the deploy user, if you don't want to use whatever the deploy user that's been specified, you can specify a different one. It's just it has to have been entered initially into PDQ deploy.
Yes, if you don't specify it, on the other hand, it uses the default one, which makes sense, but I'm going to spell that out. So in addition to specifying a different username, you can also specify a notification name for those that use the email notifications. I do want to make one call out to that, however. Notice that I'm using the notification name full details Chris, but if I switch over to deploy, I'm going to open up the preferences here. I just use Control, comma, because I use hotkeys for everything. Over here, when we go to the mail server preference, I haven't filled out the information for it, but I did change the notification name. Sometimes you might see it say deployment dash something or other with stuff. If you've seen the beta, you'll know what I'm talking about, because we have an upcoming feature that this changes slightly. I do want to make a call out that the first part of that you do not need to include. Only include the actual name of the notification, which is up here inside the notification itself.
Full details dash Chris.
Yes.
I want to call something out now. In the regular, if you don't mind,
please. In
the regular CLI, I'm talking about using the command shell. If you wanted to deploy. You're right there. That's what I'm doing. Do a deploy. Go back. Do a deploy to Wolverine and Xavier. I want to call something out and do the packages. Your example. So notice, and if you have spaces in these, you need to have double quotes.
Okay.
Go give it a go.
Oh, spelling.
Helps if you spell it correctly.
No, deploy.
Okay. This used to be that you just separated the computer names by space. Did you know that?
I did.
Okay. So those of you who've been using the CLI for a while, where you used to would say, in your dash targets, you would say, Xavier Wolverines with just a space. Now you're doing each computer's encapsulated in double quotes with a comma. Is that what you're doing?
I'm glad you brought that up because I have some pretty cool stuff coming in just a moment here. This is a good timing. Good. Very intuitive.
I think it's still backward compatible to do spaces, though.
I haven't tested it. We could test it, but I'm not going to. You could test that live in your environments. So, moving on, I want to show that the reason I want to push PowerShell for this rather than command line is because you can do some really powerful stuff with PowerShell, including importing data and manipulating it really easily on the fly or for automation. In this case, this one example here is for deploying an array, and notice I'm actually using the variable here targets, and I'm defining it just the line above as an array with 4 targets, which simplifies your syntax. So if you're using a complicated script, you can take the results of something else that happens, store the result in a variable.
So you've got your computers already stored in an array called targets.
Yep.
You can access that already defined array.
Yep.
Here.
And here we'll just run this directly. So I'm just going to highlight this and hit F8. For those of you who don't know, it runs the highlighted part.
So just so you know, targets, the array we're creating, you've got 4 computers, Wolverine, Fry, TC81, and Cyclops.
Yes, and we'll hit F8. And voila, we will switch back to deploy and see that new wonderful deployment. And it had started with those 4 machines. Really slick, really easy. It takes an array so you can feed it in directly. In addition to that, the even additional awesome part, that was fun, was using from like a CSV file. PowerShell has an import CSV commandlet that it can parse through a CSV and get you those results in a you can store in a variable. So in this case, I have a file just called computers that has computers listed in it.
Separated by
a comma.
periods?
In fact, we can even show you that there's even data in there. I mean, some of it has stuff, other of it has some data, and another column. I'm very creative with my fields.
Not just stuff, but stuff.
Yeah, so, but the important part is computer name, right here, with the computer names. And I did intentionally add a space there because there's a small hiccup that I want to address that people run into that is really easy to fix, but it's not intuitive, which is here, here's where I'm actually importing the script, importing the CSV file and storing it into this variable. Here's where I'm calling it, but I'm referencing it directly, the property, but you can dot reference it and then use double quotes.
Good.
That's so confusing to some people, myself included, until I realized that you could do that. And now I show them because I want to show that you can do this, and we will.
And it's a way to be able to handle the fact that there's a space in the CSV file. You can account for that without having to error out.
Yep. And I have this line above it commented out, but if you don't have a space, you can just do it directly. I have .computer there as an example, but it's not going to run because it's commented out. So when I highlight these 2 lines, it's going to run them in sequence, and it will start a deployment importing those 5 targets. There they are, and it's running the deployment on those. Wonderful, easy peasy, wonderful deployments.
Want to call out once again, if you, especially a lot of you ran into this when we broke up the background service with the new console users. You had you maybe added some of your console users like Chris Powell, but maybe your scripts that were pre-existing were running under a different user account from your imaging machine or something like that. Make sure whatever account is initiating that command has been added into the console users. That's very important. So if you have something, your fog user account that runs everything, all you'd have to do is just add fog user, enter the password for your background service to, in this case, Quintana, to nail that down.
Yep.
Right. That's it. That's important. Easy. Otherwise, you will see some errors if you're trying to run the CLI from an account that's not listed as a console user.
Yep. But other than that, and once you get that set up, it's super easy. As long as you add that registry key to make it use TCP.
I know you showed that. Open up the registry. I want to show them that. So let's go to HKey local machine. No, And we're going to find out that he doesn't know how to use the GUI part of the registry.
I'm right here.
There we go. So in HKey local machine software, admin arsenal PDQ deploy, we create service port. It's a D word, not a D word 64. It's just a D word. And you can see the values right there. That's what you want to do on the console machine. This will be addressed, I think, in 13. We're hoping for 13. We'll say 13. Gwen, Emily, please take note.
Answer us through this camera.
Until then, this is, if you're going to use PowerShell, just make sure you have this entered, all right?
Cool. Wonderful. I'm not going to sing, don't worry.
You just did.
I know.
You guys want to do a question?
Yeah.
Sure.
Dear Shane and Chris, what is the recommended way to deploy or scan to multiple computers, 20 or more? I've tried using PSCredential and TXT file with a list of computers, ran into some errors, John D. or Johnny dangerously.
Ooh, dangerous.
That's a good reference to a 1984 movie, Michael Keaton. One of the best lines ever, Johnny Dangerously, is Joe Piscopo when he pulls out that huge gun, says, shoots through schools. All right, so I guess you're saying, we've been showing you like 4 or 5 computers here, and what errors are you running into? Hurry and just you want to hurry and just try to throw a bunch of computers in there?
Yeah, let's take just one of these ones we just did here, and eat on the fly here. We can do a bunch. In fact, well,
Do Pam,
Pam,
Costanza.
Costanza, Fry. I don't know if I had Fry. I had Fry. Cyclops.
Mention.
Minchin with an N.
Boy, they're all coming down.
Wow, on the
Putty,
spot, thinking.
P-U-D-D-Y. Leonard.
Leonard Leonard.
I know that's not quite 20, but let's just keep on. I mean, I've used this against quite a few, and I haven't seen issues. I mean, you're going to be limited by your concurrent deployments or scans. So if you do 20 and you're scanning 8 or deploying 8 at a time, which is the default, it's just going to queue the other 12.
Wait, I just had a thought. Could you pull up that question again? I just wanted to quickly re-see that. PSCredential. Okay, so I think that might be the key here. If you're using a different credential that's not specified in the console users, this will fail.
That's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I wonder if that's actually what's going on here. If you're specifying that, that means you're probably using something like Git credential, or you are importing it using secure string, the best way. Refer to my blog. If that's the case, it will fail if it's not part of the console users. Just that simple. Amount of computers doesn't matter. You could do 20, you could do 2,000, realistically. I mean, it'll slowly go through depending upon your settings in PDQ deploy, but it's really not, it shouldn't give errors except if they're not enabled for remoting. With PowerShell, it uses WinRM. Again, refer to some old blogs or that video or this video once it's published and you can see it again. Enable PS remoting. In addition to that, that registry key that we just showed in the GUI itself in regedit, add that. Restart your console service and then try it again. Should be good.
And make sure honestly that you have the correct a good version of PowerShell on your target computers. Hate to say this, but if you're using Windows 7 out of the box, it's got PowerShell 2. We recommend doing at least 3 or higher. There is a package out there in the package library for PowerShell 5. Make sure your target machines have that latest version of PowerShell.
Yeah.
That's highly recommended.
Yes. All right. Well, quickly go over this one.
What's that one?
This is how you trigger a schedule.
Oh yeah, we'll wrap up after this. Go ahead.
So this is just as simple as is. The start schedule command inside PDQ deploy just accepts the schedule ID, which you can actually get from the schedules page here and see the ID for it. But I did want to give 2 options here. So if you know the ID from that, you can straight run this and then go back to PDQ deploy and see that it is actually running. The schedule started.
The cool thing about kicking off a schedule is you don't have to worry about specifying your targets, because when you create the schedule, you specify the targets, whether it's computer names or an Active Directory organizational unit or a PDQ inventory collection. You've already specified those targets. So all you're having to do is execute the schedule, and then those targets are taken care of.
Yep. And one other quick thing, also take a look at it on the bonus content, because right below that I also included the way to do it from the schedule name. It actually queries the database directly using the name, gets you the ID, and then goes through and starts the schedule. So there's some extra cool bonus stuff you can use and hopefully enjoy. So I really hope you do enjoy this.
Get out there and rock and roll with PowerShell, folks. And if you have any questions, by all means, hit up our support. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mr. Corgi.
Thank you.
You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations to John D. and Eddie C., winners of PDQ swag. Send us your information at webcast@adminarsenal.com. Don't forget, we have links to our bonus content and our huge 2-question survey. If you'd take a moment and take that, we'd appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week.